Hey guys, this is Dre from Twitter. Never done this before. First time I will have done this. I just want to start putting my face out there more. I don't want to be hiding behind my Twitter account. I want people to really know who I am, what I sound like, what I'm about. I want you to really feel me. I know you can in some of my tweets, but I think a lot of it gets lost in transmission. There's so much going on in Twitter. There's so many opposing beliefs and viewpoints that it can be hard to really establish like a really direct message from me to you in the way that I sincerely mean it. So I'm going to start doing this more often, and if people don't like it, they can go on ahead and unfollow me, and to me that's a win for both of us. So one thing I want to talk about today in my first video is, and I should also preface with apologies for looking so tired. I don't always look this tired. I just got off an airplane and drove home with my family after a nice vacation, but didn't get a lot of sleep this vacation, which is all good. I did get a lot of sun, had a lot of fun, managed to work out every single day, but not a lot of sleep, and not a lot of sleep again last night. So one thing I wanted to talk about came from me laying in bed at 4 a.m. today, where I tweeted something about time. And what I tweeted about was about how time is ultimately an illusion. It's not real. But it's not real in the same way that we are not our thoughts, although majority of people on the planet really believe they are their identity. If you're one of the few to sit and meditate sincerely enough to become the witness of your own thoughts, you inevitably recognize the game that you and everybody else and me that we've been playing, where our consciousness, our awareness, because it's not external, thought seems to happen right here, and we start to buy in. We attach a consciousness to thought to the point where we establish an identity through these thoughts, and because it seems to be right here, we actually think that what we are exists right here, like it feels like that. But the truth is, that's actually not true. In the same way that I can feel in my head right now, I can feel blood flowing, I can feel, my eyesight. Well, that same feeling and that same awareness, I can feel in my hand right now. So it's this sort of illusion that we create through mindful beliefs, all of which are ultimately untrue, although they seem true. We believe in this illusion and then create a reality from it. But the only way to untangle from that, in my experience, has been meditation. I do think we can suffer a tragedy that sort of snaps us out of that state of consciousness and brings us very much to a sincere, conscious experience where you are exactly where you are because you've just experienced an awful tragedy that sort of triggers you out of the illusion. I've heard of that happening too, but for me, it's just been through meditation. Certainly a few tragedies here and there that I think helped kickstart this, a lot of pain, and I'm not alone in that, I know, but that's just what I know is true. But then I found meditation, and through meditation, and when I found meditation, I was also finding people like Alan Watts, Terence McKenna, Adyashanti, Ram Dass, a lot of the greats, Eckhart Tolle, and they just kind of helped reinforce the things that I was kind of picking up on in my own journey. But I started meditating while listening to these guys talk about how there is no self. So I had an idea of that. I could feel it was true given my journey being born beneath a narcissist and an empath, extreme polar opposites. So I've always struggled with a secure sense of self, despite being, people have always told me I'm talented and all these things, but could never really see it objectively. I couldn't see it from a healthy standpoint because I struggled with my sense of self. So I was always a little suspicious about reality, about the things that people would tell me life was, just because of the experience I'd always been enduring. But it led me at 32 years old to realize these things, so it's all good. But through meditation, what I ultimately have realized is that there is no self. This self that we believe is what we are, this identity that we think is what we are, all of this is a thought. We don't control our thoughts. We simply experience them. And so when you meditate, ultimately what happens is you kind of just sit there and quiet down and you just listen. There's no doing of anything other than listening, because you don't have to try to listen. You, in your natural state of consciousness, you just are listening. That's presence. So once you recognize that thought isn't something that you are, but is something that you had kind of fooled yourself into believing was you, um, that's a big awakening. And when you can finally become the observer of the thoughts rather than believing you are the thoughts, again, that is a big awakening. But when you do recognize that there is no self, that's big. And I'm gonna talk about how it leads to um, the realization that time is ultimately an illusion as well. Because what is time? Time, as we know, is the measure of change. We measure A to B, there's distance, and there's time between. The measure of things changing. That's the only way that we could come up with a concept like time, is watching things change over time. But who is doing the measuring? Who or what is doing the measuring? If we know there is no self, well, then no longer is there a measurer of the change. So if there is no concrete, finite self doing the measuring, well, then time can't be real. It was a concept that made sense to the self, but once we see beyond the self, the whole concept of time unravels. So that's kind of the best way I can put it. And in these videos, I'm never going to edit them. I'm just going to straight shot exactly what I think. I don't like the idea of editing anything, and I don't want to. So I just want to be raw. I think that's the strongest way to get truth across, is to just be raw. So yeah, when you recognize that, the idea of time being real, it just fades away. You see through the whole thing as a kind of joke. I mean, think about how much suffering you've experienced because of an attachment to the idea of time. Unconsciously attaching your consciousness to the idea of time. It was always just an idea. It was never real in the way that my hands are, you know? But you've been late to things and you've hated yourself for it. You have, you've missed the train or whatever, and you've hated yourself for it. All these things tied to time, we just have caused ourselves a lot of suffering. Not just you and me, but the world at large. And when you recognize time isn't real, it just it pulls you back. And when things go wrong, so to speak, and you're late for something, you don't kill yourself for it. If anything, you are sincere and you apologize to whomever it was that was waiting for you, but you're not going to hurt yourself over it anymore. So in that sense, understanding that time is an illusion is like very freeing, and it executes a lot of the unconscious suffering that we'd otherwise been enduring our whole lives. But I do think, in the same way it happened to me, as I told you, I found Alan Watson and all these guys talking about things like there is no self, and I understood it in a sort of principled way. But it's taken me many years to actualize these things, because I consider myself pretty smart, so I can understand these things in my mind, but I struggle to really bring them into my body. And it wouldn't be till I was in a very meditative state, like when I'm playing the piano, when I'm, on my knees hanging out with my 2-year-old boy, where I'm just so locked into where I am that I start, I'm like, whoa, time really is an illusion. This isn't just an idea. Another thing I can relate it to is I grew up Catholic and a Christian, and I always believed in Jesus Christ. I kind of was just told to, and I never really took religion seriously. I never took Christ seriously. It just kind of seems silly to me, given the people who were teaching it to me. They didn't seem to be really locked into the truth of what they were teaching. It didn't seem real. It's kind of like Santa Claus. But then one day I woke up in the middle of my sleep. Boom. Whoa. Jesus was a real person. He was a real man. He's not just an idea. And that did something to me. So in that sort of way, it's taken me years to understand and bring into my body the reality that time is an illusion and that there is no self. I mean, these are the most freeing things possible in life. But we're so used to locking ourselves into lies and to self-inhibiting, self-limiting lies and beliefs that it can take some time to really allow the truth to actually come into your body and come into your heart because it's going to require a letting go of attachment to the mind. Pardon me. Because the mind creates a sort of false prison when you're unconscious and believing in things unconsciously. What you don't know is you're creating a sort of prison for your soul, and it becomes hard for the truth to really get in, for the light to really get in. So again, it's taken me a long time and a lot of suffering, going to drug rehab, brutal fights with my lovely lady in my life, just some really awful things that that I'll always feel a little bit of pain for my whole life, but I'm okay with that because it keeps me locked in, it keeps me motivated. Actually, I want to take that back. I don't believe I'll feel that pain forever. I don't believe that, but I'll always be aware of it, that it happened, and for that reason, I won't let it happen again. That's evolution in my eyes, but again, it took a long time for me to really bring this into my body, and I'm not saying I live there yet, but I live there enough to be able to speak about it like this, and I'm certainly feeling it right now, so hopefully you do too. But what I wanted to say was, the whole reason for this is, I believe, because I tweeted this earlier, I've got almost 20,000 people following me on Twitter, but I never know how many people really are absorbing. A lot of my tweets come from like this very special, I'm locked in, I need these people to feel what I'm feeling because this truth is changing my life. That's a lot of times where I'm coming from, but I don't know how many people really feel that. I'm sure a few do. I get plenty of cool DMs that suggest some people do, but I'd rather start sharing videos that really doubles down on what I'm saying to help those who find this. But I think for most people, when they see a tweet like mine that really does, I thought it was a pretty good job of explaining how time isn't real, I think they read it, and in the same way that they read 2 plus 2 is 4 to the logical mind, boom, makes sense. The principle makes sense. I get it. They can even make other connections from that realization, but they haven't brought it into their body. It hasn't been life changing. It hasn't shifted their consciousness. Because that's what I'm going for, not only with myself, but I want to give that to the world too, because I've tasted how beautiful that is, and I know that's what we're all looking for. I know that that's what we're all looking for. So when you hear time's an illusion, you often, it makes sense to the mind logically, but it's only on a surface layer, a surface layer of reality. It's not, you haven't brought it into your body, into your heart yet. And again, it hasn't shifted your consciousness. So how do we do that? How do we allow it to really come into the body? Because there's a big difference between knowing time is an illusion cognitively and knowing it in your body, like knowing it. Or big difference between believing it, which is mindful, and knowing it, which is your whole consciousness, your whole body, your whole being knows it. In the same way that you know I am. That's being. That's the core essence of being, the I am feeling. We want to bring this truth of time being illusion to that same degree. So how do we do that? What I advise is meditation and sort of just sitting with yourself in silence. Allow yourself to really just think about all the pain that you felt in your life, given your belief, your unconscious belief. I call it unconscious because you didn't really know what you were doing. You were just living like everyone else, taking on beliefs just like everyone else, just trying to make sense of life as best you can. But how much suffering, which is all psychological, all suffering is psychological. There's pain, but then there's psychological suffering, which is always our choosing, and thus our fault. How much pain have you felt? How much suffering have you felt because of your attachment to time? How many times have you hated yourself or felt extreme guilt that really didn't help you in the long run, all because of your belief in time? My guess is that it's probably a lot. Go ahead and cry if you need to, as I have in the past. But if you sit there, and oftentimes going out into nature alone, just being alone, away from people, man, and just sitting by yourself and really feeling these things, feeling into yourself, and then asking this question: how much has time actually taken time away? How much has my belief in time actually taken time away from my life, given the amount of pain that I've felt? Because the answer is probably a lot. And so that's unfortunate. But the beauty is the fact that you're here, the fact that you're asking these questions, the fact that you're feeling that sadness from the reality of that suffering that was unnecessary is a beautiful thing, because that pain is about to be transmuted. When you sit there and you tap into that sincerity where you are willing to look back and recognize the amount of suffering you've endured given your attachment to the idea of time, well, from there, you then start to open up a little bit. You can feel yourself starting to become more real in that moment, where you're not so caught up in your head. You end up more in your body than you otherwise tend to be. And that is when you start to really recognize how free you are, but how much you limit yourself through your beliefs. The idea of time, all you did was believe in it. You never had to. You could have been late to things and not suffered because of it. Of course, you would apologize if you were late and you left someone hanging, and you would feel some type of way about having let that person down because you were late. But you're not going to hate yourself for being late. And again, there is no self. All of these illusions are tied together, given one fundamental misunderstanding, which is that you are your thoughts. Time is an idea. An idea is just a thought. But once we relinquish our attachment to thought, we let it all go, well then, we're free. We are no longer locked into the confines of an idea, because we recognize ourselves as the awareness of the idea, which is a great symbol. Everyone's taking ideas so seriously to the point where they really believe they are the idea, the identity, the idea of what they are. They really fear death. They don't even look back to birth and recognize that they don't even remember where they were before they were born. So why would they fear death? It's not logically accurate. It doesn't make sense to fear that. But because you're so tied to the false belief that you are your thoughts, you are an idea in your mind, you're locked into a prison where your soul, like what you actually are, this infinite conscious beingness with a unique individual soul, I don't yet really know how that works, but I can feel it, is not allowed to be itself because it's locked in fear. It's locked into the constant fear of death, the constant fear of losing itself, the constant fear of being tied to time. All of these things are tied together and they're all a lie. So when you recognize time as an illusion, you are free. You're freeing yourself. You are what they call waking up. And you can feel it. You can feel this sort of, it's a letting go. Like your gut, you can feel your gut start to breathe more deeply and calmly and in a real rhythm again. You're not so tight and limited and making yourself smaller, given these mindful or mindless just attachments, these false beliefs. So I don't really have much more to say about it because all I'll be doing is saying the same thing over and over again. And all I'm really trying to do is help people deliver themselves to themselves, not the idea of the self, but to this totality of what you really are, which is freedom. You are freedom. But when you believe in things like time, you are giving your power away. You are choosing to be in a prison of thought, when in reality, no thought should ever cause you pain. No thought itself has the power to cause you pain, because you are the awareness. You are the king of reality. You are the awareness of all the thoughts. So when you're believing you are thought, of course you're in a merry-go-round of suffering. But when you take that step back, a lot of times we just have to get fed up with the suffering, as I have. You take a step back, you observe it all. Finally, you stop playing a game. You stop listening to the thoughts in your head as if you are them and as if you need to take them seriously. And you recognize yourself simply as the observer of them. You're just listening to these thoughts. In the same way that you're now just listening to time. It's not real. It's not something to take seriously. It's just a tool to help you go from A to B in life in the best way you can. But it certainly isn't real. In the same way that this poor little me that you think you are in your head certainly isn't real. You are beyond that. You are bigger than that. Matter of fact, you are infinite. So yeah, I hope that helps someone out there. I wish I had someone saying these things to me and just being vulnerable and sincere. And I just wish I like had you know, some friends who were doing this stuff. Pardon me again. When I was going through my awakening, when I first started, you know, trying to think about all this stuff on my own. So I kind of want to be that for other people. So here I am. If you guys have any questions, if you have any critiques, please let me know. Anything you think I could do better, anything you might want to see. But again, anytime I have, I think, a powerful insight that could help somebody, I'm going to start sharing it on my YouTube channel. And I hope you enjoy. And if you do, I never thought I'd be this guy, please like and comment and share and subscribe, because there will be plenty more. And I assume I will only, no, I know I will only be getting better at this. So thank you very much.